Welcome to the Human Nature Channel. I'm your host, mtamsula, and what am I doing here? Well, it's Wednesday afternoon inside the house. I'm doing this at the kitchen table. I couldn't get a farm garage video done last night, and it really annoys me. Three things were working against me. The first thing was, even when I got up here, I was feeling kind of tired. So as I'm trying to get usable clips, I'm making more mistakes and I'm getting more and more tired, and it turned into a real chore. The second problem was my script needed a lot more work. I performed the script and I edit it as I go. I got a red pen. I'm like, oh, that sentence can go. I can rearrange that word order. It takes a lot of time. And the third problem was the temperature last night was about 58 degrees, which is perfect for fleas and mites. So I'm trying to get the video done, and every once in a while I'm like crunching something between my teeth. It's like, pfft. Or I'd breathe one in and start coughing. By 3 a.m., I had half the script edited. I had a sore throat from swallowing these bugs, and my sinuses were bothering me. So it's like the Grateful Dead says, pack it up and see what tomorrow brings. And I'm like, all right. I will do the introduction for the video inside the farmhouse, which I'm doing right now. And the Las Vegas Shooting Truth Community Yak, I'm going to do later back at the apartment. But I did want the standard introduction, so... Oh, yeah. Yeah, can't forget Irv. Irv is a transitional figure. Irv, I couldn't get a video done last night, Irv. Oh, thank you, Irv. Yeah, you want to catch my tears in your cup. Oh, you're such a pal, Irv. Time for your close-up, buddy. So how about some Las Vegas Shooting Truth Community Yak, because that's what you're here for. Did you know Las Vegas is Spanish for the Meadows? I looked it up because I was curious. In the comments section of last week's video, number 79, I had an interesting exchange with Sherman Kearns. Sherman does not believe Stephen Paddock was the shooter, which would also mean believing in a staged crime scene, massive corruption of the LVMPD and FBI, and a cover-up all the way to the top of the food chain, likely including the President of the United States. Sherman and I went back and forth a couple of times. I'm not going to read everything we wrote to each other except my final summation. But I'd like to thank Sherman for getting into the debate. Reacting to other people's statements always gives me a chance to rethink my positions. Here is where my head is at right now. Okay, Sherman. This is where I started in my early videos on the LVS. I even talked about the number of headshots and wondered if this indicated someone with military sniper training going for the one-shot kill. It couldn't have been one man, I said back then. And Paddock was just there for a blame the dead guy scenario. But you know what stopped me from believing in another shooter besides Paddock? You've got to get the other shooter out of the room. Where did he go? How did he get out? One of my friends here in the Las Vegas Shooting Truth Community, Concerned Citizen, thought escape was possible through air vents in room 32-134. But I've heard from people who have seen such vents and concluded the vents are too narrow for this. Escape has to be addressed if you believe Paddock didn't do it. I've gone over the lock interrogation report with an index card under each entry. The other shooter didn't leave through the door after the shooting. I've even toyed with the idea of a shooter going out the window of room 32-134 by rope while wearing a shiny cape, the color of the outside window reflections. I can do far-fetched with the best of them. I'm also aware of all the things you've mentioned, except the welded cap. First time I've ever heard of that. All these things had been covered by Mike Turbert to my satisfaction. So my focus is on who was Paddock? I think trying to untangle that knot is the most fruitful path of inquiry. Paddock was an athletic guy, according to Brother Eric. He had a diseased brain, according to the neurologist who examined it posthumously. He could sometimes wake up in the middle of the night screaming, according to Mary Lou Danley. It seems to me something was eating Paddock from the inside out, but what was it? And just to let you know, I don't rule out MK Ultra style shenanigans either. Or even the child porn on one of his laptop computers making him a prime candidate for being blackmailed into doing something he didn't want to do. You think another or others did the shooting, besides Paddock, fine. Sometimes I think maybe Paddock was a reluctant shooter. We'll see, I said to Sherman. Remember my video number 78, Please Take a Number and Have a Seat? In it, I asked the question, did anything important happen on September 29th, 2017? Since that day, Paddock never left the property of Mandalay Bay, at least according to the FIT report. I covered a few things of interest, like this was the day Paddock was booked into room 32-134. But something else happened on September 29th, as I later realized, and it was the day Stephen Paddock had a text message exchange with his mistress, the 29-year-old single mother with whom Paddock had a 4-year relationship. This is all from a Daily Mail article from January 20th, 2020, in which you get to read Paddock's own words. At 5:57 a.m. on September 29th, Paddock texts the woman named Kate in the article. Are you still in Las Vegas? I haven't been feeling that great and have been struggling a bit lately. It would be good to just hear your voice and hear how you are doing and potentially see each other, even just for coffee. Please consider it. About 10 minutes later, Paddock wrote, Do you still have the same number? It was worth a try. I truly hope you are well, happy, and life has been good for you. You're a good person, and I do appreciate everything you have done for me. You have been more than a friend to me, and I am sorry for anything I've done to hurt you. All the best. Later, Paddock's tone changes. There are so many people who don't deserve to be alive. Too many people are so concerned with themselves. You can be there for everyone, but when you need someone, there is nobody to be seen. I became a recluse for that reason. The best way to live life is with a wall between you and everyone else. So when they do hurt you, the sting isn't so bad. In other messages, Paddock said, People in society have become evil, self-loathing, selfish, and entitled. The best way to go about it, just disconnecting yourself from other humans. You will always end up being hurt and disappointed. People these days are evil. I find these texts very interesting since they give us a window into Stephen Paddock's mind just 3 days before the shooting. And what's amazing is how self-pitying he sounds. You can be there for everyone, but when you need someone, there is nobody to be seen. Who is this everyone he mentions? They would have to be individuals from his past, since he says, I became a recluse for that reason. And from everything I've read about Paddock, it seems he had this reclusive attitude for some time. Paddock's disappointment with the way people have taken advantage of him could not have been some new perspective. He had to be carrying this around inside him for a long time. People these days are evil means Paddock was seeing evil wherever he looked. And there are so many people who don't deserve to be alive suggests he intended to do something about it. Paddock didn't see himself as a bad guy, although he obviously was. So a motive for his act is hard to come by. I tend to think Paddock had a head full of grievances and was pointing the blame at this factor or that for his misery, which might depend on what he was brooding on. It could have been Mary Lou at one moment, or the casinos penalizing him for winning too much the next. Or it could be a group of associates we know nothing about, possibly the evil people he mentioned. Paddock sounds bipolar as suggested by the doctor who prescribed him Valium. Having known a bipolar person, there's something awfully familiar about this. I'm going to toss out a speculation here, and that's all this is. I have no proof behind what I'm going to say next, but as a possible theory, it does do a job of tying together many of the disconnected facts we've heard since October 1st, 2017. Let's look at it this way. Paddock made a small fortune in real estate, specifically apartment buildings. At the Central Park Apartments, Paddock got high marks for being a good landlord since he lived on site and was pretty active in making it an attractive place. Paddock was, by all accounts, a competent apartment manager. Now, let's say I'm an agent for, I don't know, the FBI, the ATF, the DEA, and I need a safe house. I need an apartment from which I can conduct surveillance. I need a room I can have wired so I can conduct sting operations. And I heard about this Stephen Paddock and find out he's a former IRS agent. He's worked in government. He was a civil servant and he's competent. Maybe I can approach this guy and inform him I'd like to rent one of his apartments for some of the services I mentioned. Would Stephen Paddock go for something like that? If he did, then at that point Paddock became part of the federal machine again. But this time at a higher, riskier level. Being part of this, where you're a law enforcement asset, can be tough on a person. It's a dangerous place and could get you hurt or worse. Soft body armor. It could cause stress and anxiety unless you had a really strong stomach for it. If you're a guy like Paddock whose mind was slipping toward delusion, he may have come to the conclusion that the feds were setting him up for some kind of fall, so he decided to strike first. If this were true, Paddock's motive could have been to stick it to the feds. Okay, Rouse, you were going to throw me to the wolves. Now investigate this. Wouldn't it be funny if Stephen Paddock knew Special Agent Aaron Rouse by sight? Rouse had been on TV before. He was there for the San Bernardino shooting and he was in charge. He was given that assignment by FBI Director James Comey, that paragon of virtue. And I wouldn't be having any of these silly thoughts if it wasn't for that sleaze bucket Paladin, who rented an apartment from Stephen Paddock at one time. Paladin is a sleaze bucket because he hid this information from us. Anyway, there's always something interesting inside or outside my dad's garage. What can I show you today? Well, behind me is the entire length of the driveway. I've showed you all the sights along it. It's 1/10 of a mile long. If you were to run it 10 times, you'd cover a mile and not get anywhere. For some reason, I find that an interesting idea. Anyhow, we're going to cross the road here. Yeah, I don't have my glasses on. Don't want to get hurt. Alrighty, here we have the mailbox. And what you have there is an old-fashioned milk can filled with cement, and the post of the mailbox is down in it, so it's nice and solid. That's the funny thing about us Eastern Europeans. We don't throw anything out. Everybody keeps asking me, where's Dad?
There he is.
Oh, okay. Well, we got that question answered. Yeah, you got to do me another demonstration one of these days.
One of these days, we'll get as soon as it cools off.
Okay, it's a promise. Thanks, Dad.